Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, it is Monday. We have one final division to record our thoughts before we get into this regular season. The preseason is in the books. No more preseason NFL. We got through mostly unscathed in terms of injuries, I guess, outside of the Baltimore Ravens, who can't seem to catch a break here. But it was, I hope you had a good weekend. You about ready to put a bow on the season previous?
Yes, it is time to put a bow on it. And yes, it's been a good just like I haven't got too involved. It's been smaller bets, but it's just when you see stuff, there's a lot of good live betting opportunities. Like everybody who watched the 49ers start, it's like, oh, like this is going to work. And then I looked when the 49ers were crossing right at midfield. They're at one of the 49s, 0-0. Their first half team total was 12.5. I'm like, wow. Like we'll give that a tickle, and of course they score on that. I'm just not to like, oh look at me, I'm so good at preseason, but I've been extremely lucky with like preseason live betting. Like everything has worked. Like a lot of times that ends up probably with 10. I think they ended up with 20 points at half, didn't they?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And so you're saying that the live markets are already dialed in.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I felt like that should have been. They could have gone to 14.5 quick with that. The way that offense. It's hard to do that without any points on the board, but it went up pretty quick. I almost came in back at an under of I think when I got to 17.5 or something. Never did worked out. College was fun. There wasn't much of it, but my guy Matoye gave me a UCLA ticket. Everybody and their sister gave me a what was it? UTEP ticket. UTEP ticket.
UTEP was very solid. Yeah.
UTEP second half -7 might have been a tickle. So
golf that was awesome.
Buck wild. We're getting into some awesome tennis starting now.
Golf was super good this weekend.
I don't know, like
dominated.
I don't know about.
I'm very happy about my golf performance.
I don't know about good. Like they can take that course and fire it into the sun. I never want to see. I never want to see that course.
Are you just bitter because there were guys that beat your score?
I don't know. No, did they? I think I shot lower. I'm gonna have to.
What did you shoot? What did you shoot?
I'm gonna shoot 4 rounds. I'm gonna shoot for -30. I'm actually embarrassed nobody got to -30. So no, well, it's just terrible golf to watch that sort of thing. Although, yeah, I did have a couple nice wins in a few of the. I was doing a lot of underdogs. Honestly, if you have a shit course like this, great underdog betting for head-to-heads once you get into the tournament. Because anybody can go out there and shoot 62 all of a sudden. Or if you have guys that are even close, if you're getting a decent dog price, I took a bunch of underdogs. A lot of it was just I had 2 pushes on some like plus 150 matchups, which sucks. I could have taken them at the plus half a stroke, which I don't often do. But no, it was a overall fun weekend. I kind of went off the grid, honestly. It's one of my last weekends before we really get into the NFL season because next weekend's pretty involved with fantasy for me. And actually, God, that's a hell of a segue. That is a hell of a segue, Andy, that you didn't even mean to do. Before we get into the Cardinals, I do want to mention we didn't give it a lot of shine, but we don't do much fantasy here other than giving out the lock of the DFS lock of the year every week, year on week 1. It's Evan Ingram this year, even though that's kind of a bad.
He got hurt, didn't he?
Yeah, he got hurt. It's kind of a bad team too, but yes, we did acquire 4 for 4. I've been a fan of those guys. Drew and I actually appeared on their show last year with Ryan and Connor.
I'm a multiple time guest on the 4 for 4 betting podcast.
We've had a lot of fun talking to those guys, but they are a part of the family now, and I think this promo code is going to be ongoing. But if you do want a fantasy subscription, I think you can get DFS optimization. You can get fantasy articles, everything you want over there. They do have a 25% off subscription right now with using BS25. And I think the BS stands for BETSPERTS and not what the other thing BS
Bullshit 25.
Bullshit 25. But yeah, 25% off ain't bad. And they do keep their prices pretty reasonable. It's lower than some of the competitors. So welcoming them, and hopefully we're going to do some crossover stuff with them over the season.
Cannot wait.
That red makes me think of the Sea of Red down in Arizona, and we'll
Glendale, Arizona, the very outside the city of Phoenix exurbs. Not really that far out.
Boy, we have two of these. With the one on Wednesday when we get to the Niners, the jeans is like an hour from
Santa
downtown
Clara, California.
Yeah,
an hour with no traffic. It could be quite a lot longer if you don't pick the right time. Although who the hell knows now that they have work from home? Maybe traffic's not that bad up there. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, that's turned into a thing. 8-8 last year, though.
Let's talk about
they
the
improved,
Cards.
didn't they?
Oh yeah, big time. They improved, of course. Yeah, no. 2019 was a rough go for them. They were 5-10-1 with the notable tie against the Lions week 1 when we were in Vegas last.
How did that go
for NFL?
I hate that you have to keep reliving that. I'm sorry.
I know, it's great. Love it. The Lions Cardinals got me last year too, because we had a massive price on over 51, I want to say, week 3 that closed about 55, 56.
Landed
and
on
they
49,
scored 49.
I can tell you that.
I landed on 49. There was quite a lot of field goals in that game.
The last 3 scores. I remember it was at 40. It was at 40.
Yeah.
And it was like field goal. Yep.
Field goal. There was a missed extra point. There was so many things went against us in that one. That
was a good play. I'll go to the grave saying that.
I agree. Well, I mean, when you get that much CLV, you know you're on the right side. So, and honestly, when you don't win those plays after that much CLV, like then you'll have more opportunities down the road. Yeah.
When you get negative CLV like that, you always lose that. I remember that's true. Remember when we didn't check the weather report and we got excited about the Raiders Cleveland over? And that moved like 8 points against us. That was my biggest CLV loss of like the last 5 years. Ever. No, I couldn't find something bigger.
I had a bigger CLV win when I think I had the Bears the year that Stafford got scratched, and it was the Jeff Driscoll show, maybe.
We had one of those at the Colts.
Or was it the David Blau, Mr. Blau. He came one of those games. I had like 6 points of CLV on a side, and it was glorious. But yeah, no, this is I bet on a lot of Cardinals games last year. Now that I reliving, looking up and down the schedule here, they started off the season incredibly solid start to their season, 5-2 heading into their bye week, including a week 1 massive upset over the Niners. I think they were 7 or 8 point dogs. They went outright on the road against the defending Super Bowl runners-up, the defending NFC champions. They went to their house and they hung an L on them. They backed it up with an impressive multiple touchdown win against the Washington football team. That was the Dwayne Haskins era football team, though, so they were pretty bad offensively at that time. They lost to the Lions, which was a shocker. They lost to the Panthers, which was a shocker, but then they comfortably handled the Jets, the Cowboys, and then eked out an overtime win against the Seahawks. And so you went into that bye week thinking this team is headed for the playoffs, right? Middle of season last year, around Halloween, we were probably thinking, man, Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are taking these guys to the playoffs, right?
And that's what we'd be sitting here, and everybody in the offseason would be looking at this team so differently. Especially one of the things, if you're watching this on YouTube and you look down the chart on the side, it says Cliff hot seat. Actually, there's no question mark, but there shouldn't be. He is on the hot seat. If they win one more game, they're in the playoffs. Obviously, I mean, they would have been in the playoffs with one more win. That's just how the math worked out. And this is a whole different narrative. All right, he got him to the playoffs now. Now we'd be talking Cliff take the next step. We wouldn't be talking Cliff hot seat. And I think it's tough. It's tough because it might be a little unfair. You really did illustrate well. Like there was like a division point in the season, some of it, I do got to slap on the Murray shoulder injury. Like just what happened down the, what happened down the stretch. The amount of times he ran, the amount of times he had actually drawn up runs, knowing, I mean, the coaching staff knew they shouldn't be running him as much. Yeah. And he was so efficient running the ball, not only like on scrambles, but when they just called it like Lamar, like he's uber efficient. And it's this weird catch-22 because if you limit his running, obviously you're limiting your winning. because he has such a high EPA when he runs. But the more he runs, the more he's likely to get hurt because he's a little shortstop. So it's a tough conundrum. But again, that's what happened. And I did have the weirdest fun fact as I was searching through this.
Oh, really? I love a fun fact.
Week 6, when they beat the Cowboys,
that was an absolute ass kicking, by the way.
That was the first road Monday Night Football game they've won since 1977, which just seems like a stupid long time.
Oh my God.
And then, we can talk all we want about the collapse in the second half of the season. I would like you to pick out your favorite F-up game from the second half of their season. And it can't be the Patriots game. I mean,
it was absolutely the Niners. No, it's absolutely the Niners.
Talk about the Patriots game.
Week 16 against the Niners, 100%. That was the one. I definitely bet the Dolphins. The Dolphins played them very tough that day. That was a very hard fought win.
Oh
for the
yeah,
Dolphins.
we were all over that.
They were lucky as hell to get a win against the Buffalo Bills. That was the Hail Murray game. DeAndre Hopkins catching the impossible target at the end of that one to flip the winner. And then you expected them to lose to the Seahawks. The Seahawks were playing very well at that point in time in the season. And maybe it was kind of a win that they only held the Seahawks to 28 points, I guess. I don't really remember the Patriots loss. I'm assuming that was because Murray got hurt in the Seahawks game and he wasn't rushing much. And you nailed it. The third down efficiency of the entire team just went off of a cliff once Murray was not willing to scramble on third because they couldn't convert thirds through the air otherwise for whatever reason. And Sean McVay has always kind of picked on the little brother Cardinals, so that wasn't a shocker. I guess you beat the Giants and the Eagles, and you're 8-6. All you need to do is beat the 49ers at home. A game where you are facing CJ Beathard. And I mean, at this point in the season, the Niners season is over. They're literally, playing for draft position. Everyone is hurt. Kittle was out of the game. Deebo Samuel obviously didn't play last year. Actually, Kittle did play. Excuse me. Kittle was available for that one. But the half of the defense was on the IR at this point. It was literally... you were 5-point favorites at home there. I had a great number on them, and they let me down. They lost 20-12, and realistically, it didn't even feel that competitive. Cliff Kingsbury just absolutely stunk up the joint in terms of his approach to that game. I mean, they had some chances to score late in that one, but it was the same old inefficiency in the red zone, inefficiency on third down that cost them that win. And that's kind of the major takeaway I had of this entire team and that entire season. It was a 500 team that struggled when the going got tough. And when Kyler Murray was limited because of injury or because of what the play call was given to him by the coach, that offense was stuck in mud. And I thought that San Francisco game was, perfect example of that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the one. I have a second just in case you pick that because I thought there was a high probability you would. But yeah, I brought that up earlier in a chat, a football chat that's based, and I said your quarterback has the odds likelihood that one of your receivers goes over 100 yards, and they were pretty high answers because that's what happened. Murray threw the ball 50 times in that game. And had not only nobody got to 100 yards, he did not throw a touchdown pass. And then, Beathard, quietly efficient because it's, maybe a better coach, better team. They weren't as dinged up on the offense as they were in the defense. Beathard threw 22 times for 3 touchdowns. just a weird box score. And then, like my backup would probably be the Rams game. Like you needed it. You had to win it. You had playoff chances. You could have jumped the Bears with a win there, and you're facing something called, I don't know if I can remember his first. Was it just John Wolford? No, Wolford.
John Wolford.
That sounds right. Wolford.
I believe that was Strevler. That was Strevler versus
Rams
Wolford, wasn't it? Didn't Murray miss that game?
Yeah, I
feel like Strevler played a lot of it.
I think you might be right on that one too.
Murray started.
It's just like,
he got knocked out. Yeah,
Yeah, but
Murray
Strebler's
started
good,
that
man.
one.
I
He
think
only
that might
he
be an
only made
upgrade.
Murray only passed 11 times, and then it was the Chris Streveler show, and Streveler was a little wild.
Strebler streveled.
He streveled.
He's streveled to win.
Streveling. He was streveling out there. But yeah, the Rams and Wolford. I mean, good Lord, Wolford threw 38 pass attempts in that game against you. Wolford ran it 6 times for 56 yards. He was
I was gonna say
ground.
he scrambled like somebody should be picking him up. Like, are we sure you want Daniel Jones when there's a John Wolford out there, guys?
Yeah, no, that was weird. Yeah, I mean, the season was a failure, honestly. After starting as hot as they did, after getting the wins that they did, not being able to seal the deal and get yourself to the playoffs and get some of your young guys some playoff game reps, it's in a very weak NFC. You lost a playoff spot to Mitch Trubisky and the Bears. Need I remind you, Mitch Trubisky no longer with the Bears. He was summarily fired and relieved of his duties. And they got a playoff spot over you. You don't get your guys some playoff reps. And it was, I think it's completely fair to be extremely critical of Cliff Kingsbury's vision, really, for this offense. The fact that you have as dynamic a playmaker as Kyler Murray on the field, and you could only manifest about league average offense is insane to me. Similarly, the fact that you stole DeAndre Hopkins from the Houston Texans and you're still unable to convert regularly on third down is an enormous red flag. Like, that guy's got the most insane catch radius and drops nothing. I think I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure DeAndre Hopkins has 0 career drops at this point on about 3,000 targets. Rough estimate.
You're within a plus minus there, I think, with 0. Like, I think it's honestly pretty close. He is, his range, his arm range, his wingspan is stupid. Get it anywhere. It's like the old saying, like, if you can ball, you should catch the ball. Like, that's just kind of how he lives his life. That's his mantra. And yeah, that was stealing, and a lot of people had some high hopes for him. And really, like, I'd kind of let off with, that changes the whole outlook for this team. But definitely, the Murray injury was a drag. Not being able to get this offense to do what they wanted later in the season, when Murray was a little limited with his legs, based on just he couldn't take as many hits. And then the defense we knew it wasn't going to be there, but it really just wasn't there at times. And we're going to have to talk about that a little more too, because the defense, some of the changes we made, I'm not sure, it has to work. You throw enough money at something, it should figure itself out. But boy, this secondary has me worried. So if you want to...
real quick, to correct the record, DeAndre Hopkins had 160 targets last year, 2 drops. 2. And it's because his hands are incredible. He's not going to get a ton of separation. A number of the passes that were thrown his way were well defended. A number of times, teams could key on him because he was really the only guy that was a true receiving threat on the field. And so if it was an obvious passing down, they could put 2 hats on him. But he's still, he was in the same way that we talked about Travis Kelce, the cheat code, Hopkins should be that guy for this offense. And he really wasn't. And now Hopkins, 29, getting up there in the old,
I mean, but the window isn't going to be that big. Here. Especially if they move, and we'll get to Cliff, but the window changes dramatically if you start Stoder with a new coaching staff, if this year is a failure. And I guess before we get to changes, what if you were the Bidwell family / whatever? I have no idea what the GM is.
Steve Kime. He is.
Oh my God! How can I not think?
As well,
yeah, there you go. I could not think of that. I don't know how I could pull the owners, but not the GM somehow. Maybe it's because one of the Bidwells died a couple of years ago and it's fresh. But R.I.P. whichever Bidwell it was. I'm sure it was one of the older ones. There was we kind of had a soft. It was
quite sad.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, Steve Kime. If you are Mr. Kimes, what changes would you try to be making to this team before we get to their changes?
If I am Mr. Kime, I am doing everything in my power to network away into my next job, because I do not believe that I am coming back for the 2022 campaign. I mean, that's really all there is.
You hit me with trick question, trick answer.
I don't think he realistically gets to make the decision about what to do if the Cardinals underwhelm this year. And there's no reason really not to think that they're going to underwhelm again, because their schedule is bleeping impossible and their division is super competitive, and they didn't really hit on any of their off-season moves, really, that I could tell you. I mean, maybe JJ Watt has something left in the tank, but my expectations are quite low. Chandler Jones, your only impact player on defense, wants off the team. That's never a good sign. You've drafted and missed a number of times over the last several years, and it's not a team that you really look at and say, well, they got a lot of interesting pieces. If this coaching staff could just develop these guys, no, they not really.
But you're not developing JJ Watt. You're not developing Chandler Jones. But I mean, I like that you drafted two pretty nice prospects in Simmons and last year and Collins this year, maybe playing behind some used to be high-end guys with a lot of knowledge of the football. We can see a quicker ascension there. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for changes out, and granted, I like the Collins pick. I like the Rondale Moore pick. In fact, I liked a couple of their draft picks. It wasn't horrible considering where they were drafting. But yeah, the JJ Watt thing does move the needle for me. Malcolm Butler, how do you feel about that before I get to my Malcolm Butler talk?
Is he going to play?
Yeah.
That's never good. You don't want to be on the eve of the season and guys like Chandler Jones want off the team and guys like Malcolm Butler are contemplating retirement. Like, that's not good. And they needed to hit on some of these guys because Patrick Peterson got old. You let him walk, and you didn't bring back Drake Kirkpatrick. You didn't bring back Jonathan Joseph. You're turning
all
over
of your outside corner snaps.
You're turning you're turning it all over.
Almost all of them. So you needed Malcolm Butler to hit. And otherwise, your secondary sucks.
Don't get me wrong. Like, Budda Baker is an exciting player, and maybe he's one of the best strong safeties in the NFL. I'm not building a defense around Budda Baker. No thanks. And similarly, Isaiah Simmons has an enormous amount of promise. He's a guy that should be able to excel because he's just so GD talented, but I don't necessarily have a ton of faith that Vance.
Fantastic.
Oh, of course, but he's not.
No, but
he's not.
Look
he's
at
not
the Minnesota Vikings.
Add wins.
Harrison Smith is fantastic, but if you have a really, 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 like, even a high, and Harrison Smith's better than Budda Baker, but you saw what happens. You can have a really good, strong safety if the rest of the secondary sucks. Like, how much did we talk about Harrison Smith last year? I mean, maybe a pick
Not
here and
all.
there. It's just like,
I don't think at all. Yeah, there was too many other weak links. It's a weak link system, and they were all weak except for Harrison Smith. So who cares? This is kind of the same sort of deal.
Yeah, I brought up the young linebackers. Maybe they take a quick step forward with some of the presence in front of them. Yeah. But honestly, like, does the front seven, and I'll throw Budda Baker in there because that makes you a front seven if you're playing, three corners.
Sure.
Does the front seven matter that much if your corners are, the Alford, and my God, it's going to look like if Butler doesn't, I think Alford might have COVID right now. If Butler doesn't play, you're looking at Byron Murphy.
Yeah, we're going to see, you're going to see a lot of Ahkello Witherspoon. You're going to see a lot of, oops, I'm sorry. That's the Seahawks depth chart. My bad.
I was going to say, he got traded to a different team.
I got to pull up the Cardinals. I see them. We're doing two teams today, obviously. So my tabs got a little confused there. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of, Byron Murphy. You're going to see a lot of Byron Murphy. You're going to see a lot of
Daryl Worley,
Marco Wilson. Whew, man, you're going to see just some Jace Whitaker. I don't even know if these guys are really going to make the team, but if Malcolm Butler's not good to go, and I don't even know if Malcolm Butler's, his best football is probably behind him, even if he does play. So this is going to be a ton of pressure on this unit. A lot of places you can attack them through the air, but to your point about the linebackers, Zaven Collins looks like he can play. That kid can play. Isaiah Simmons, we know, has talent. He should be able to take a meaningful step forward this year. That's cool that you have this sort of duo of young, impactful linebackers. That's going to give your team lots of chances when you're down. Like, I don't see teams being able to put away the Cardinals with the ground game late in games. I think the Cardinals are going to get lots of bites at the apple. They're going to get lots of chances. They're set up well to do decent amount of, a decent run defense here. The problem is they're going to be playing from behind a lot because I don't think your coverage is good enough. And, if you don't have a pass rush that is going to consistently win, like a Washington football team kind of a pass rush, then your secondary is going to be exposed at points in games and teams are going to be able to throw on you. And, just the way that they went about stocking their cornerbacks for this season is a little suspect, in my opinion.
Yeah, Butler's probably your best addition unless one of these day 3 rookies hits. I don't even know if these guys are on, like Marco Wilson. I'm not even sure Tagon. We're kind of at that tweener stage where I haven't kept up on all the news about the cuts. We're getting the cut down stuff to see if some of these rookies even make the squad. If you listen to some old episodes, we'll probably talk about some guys that aren't even on the team anymore. But yeah, it's an issue in today's day and age, especially with the schedule they face, which we'll get to later. I don't know if JJ Watt, Chandler Jones play above where we think they are, and both linebackers play above where a rookie and a second-year player work. I don't think it matters a hill of beans if the secondary is bad, and that's my biggest takeaway from the changes we made in the offseason. I'm not moving. I won't even spend much time on the offensive side of the ball. Somebody mentioned they gave Rondell a lot of looks in the preseason. I like that.
Rondell Moore was a nice pick.
It's a nice pick. I thought he might have gone in the first round. He was mocked in some people's first rounds because wide receivers had a little bit of a range there right around the 20 to 40 mark. And I think he went somewhere. He went 49th from Purdue. That's not a bad grab. And the AJ Green, honestly, the Rondale Moore thing probably moves the needle more than the AJ Green.
Absolutely.
Maybe we're dead wrong on AJ Green. Maybe it was just, hey, you were playing.
I'll pay to see it. I'll pay to see it. I don't.
That's the thing. He was hurt, and he played in a bad system with probably a lame duck coach with a weird transition years here between the last regime and bringing into Joe Burrow and then the injuries. So maybe Andy Murray, AJ Green. I'm stuck on tennis today, man. AJ Green. Not even close to the same person.
Kyler Murray
has a little
Andy
bit.
Murray.
Kyler Murray.
Andy Green.
Andy Green.
Murray. Yeah.
But if he has a little bit left in the tank and Rondale Moore hits, I'm excited for the offense with a healthy Murray. That's certainly a thing. The defensive or the offensive line is very good. A couple of really nice tackles. I don't know much of the middle, I guess. Pugh's okay, but the offensive line is getting a little up there, but it's a solid offensive line. It's definitely a top half of the league offensive line.
Got Rodney Hudson. He's legit.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, that is your center. Okay, good. And then, the running back swap, Connor for Kenyon, I don't give a shit. Like, that doesn't matter.
No.
Your most efficient runner is the guy taking the snaps anyway. Get him to figure it out, make AJ Green and Rondale Moore work, figure out your splits as far as how many times you're using 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field now that you have a healthy quarterback again, and let the offense do the work because the defense might legitimately stink.
Yeah. So what we're basically getting down to then is you've set yourself up to where your offense must take a step forward, right?
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
is dicey, considering who's in charge of that offense specifically. Let's talk about a little Kyler Murray before we go there, though. Is Kyler Murray good? I think he is. I mean, is your rating on Kyler? We talked when we were talking about Herbert last week. It was a great back and forth, I thought, and I think you qualified Herbert as 8 to 18. We don't. It's an incomplete to this point. We need more information. And I guess, do you feel similarly about Kyler Murray through 2 years of his NFL resume, or do you have a little bit higher degree of certainty with what he is?
No, I think a lot of this comes down to more of the coaching, and then also the injury last year really muddied the waters as far as getting a feel. But when he came into the league, Cliff Kingsbury had I mean, not only like what he said, but just what the media said about him. And this is what's going to happen with this offense. And boy, we're going to run 10 personnel and we're going to have, 4 or 5 wideouts so much. And this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I felt like he got hamstrung by himself and the media and the blitz of like, this is the offense I've been expected to run. And I'm going to see if it works in the NFL. And he did make some, without like verbally backtracking. I don't watch all his press conferences. Maybe he's mentioned it, but like he's gotten away from that a little just because if you have 4 wide receivers out there 80% of the time, guess what? Your wide receivers are going to get hurt. Like they don't all need that many snaps. Like that was kind of a side effect of that. If you don't have the depth, which actually I do kind of like their depth this year with, we didn't even mention some of the backups in the wide receiver. I do like this offense if things work out because you have Kirk, Johnson, a couple other guys sitting back there, Isabella, that like just guys who have, for nothing better than experience, I guess. Like you've played at least, like especially with Andy Isabella and Christian Kirk as some of your secondary options. Those guys have gotten plenty of snaps. That's something with depth. So yeah, it's difficult for me to say based on the changes Cliff made from year 1 to year 2. And then, with Kyler year 1 to year 2, we saw a really nice start to the season. And granted, that does help to get a brand new shiny toy like Deshaun or Mr. I almost said the quarterback, not the wide receiver, but
DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah.
Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins nuke that's going to make you a better quarterback just by default. But yeah, I think if that's what we get when he's healthy, and Cliff understands that he needs to run him, but not as much as he was to the point where he's going to hurt his shoulder because he's a middle guy. And we find a happy medium in that. And we use this wide receiver depth and we get the play sequencing down and they stop running the ball. Cliff makes good decisions. He doesn't run into stacked boxes. He makes adjustments. It was tough to make the adjustments when he was a little hamstrung in the second half of the year with Kyler's, I'm really putting a lot of onus on Kyler's injury. So if he's bad, I'm just dumb. I don't know. Do you have, I'm going to make you like a debate class in high school, take a counterpoint. Why is Kyler bad? Just got to set you up for that.
I don't.
He had bad performances.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess I don't
multiple
think
weeks
he's,
throwing a touchdown.
yeah, I don't think he's bad. I think it's more of a he has the skill set to be a Russell Wilson light, size, arm, mobility, all of it is very Russell Wilson-esque. And so you kind of want to, you want to see him kind of go down that, lean into that a little bit more. And the fact that you get to see these guys play each other a couple times a year and that it's so clear that Wilson is a different class of quarterback, I think keeps Murray decidedly into the second tier of guys, no matter if he continues to improve. And some of what we see from him, because, we're being tough on him, but he's a top 12. He was top 12 last year, EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation. It was, his dots right in there with the Lamar Jacksons and the Joe Burrows, the Baker Mayfields. Like these guys are elite guys that you would believe in and to kind of lead your franchise. And there was really no flaw in his games from a statistical standpoint, other than just struggling in high leverage moments. And is that repeatable? Is that consistent? Is he always going to struggle on third down? Who knows? I tend to think not, that's not very likely. But he does have, some characteristics that are minus EV. He fumbles a lot. He had 9 fumbles last year. That was a little bit concerning. He only 26 passing touchdowns to 12 interceptions, not an ideal ratio there. Some of that was, again, they get into the red zone and I just feel like the play calling kind of stinks. And
It did.
I want to blame Cliff more than I want to blame Kyler. And like to the degree where, if if Murray is underwhelming this year, and the Cardinals are under 500, and it's clean house next year, you're probably getting a bargain basement market expected price on Murray with a new offensive coach, assuming they get a guy that can kind of push the envelope a little bit from an offensive scheme standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I think there were times last year, clearly heading into last year, like his price for like MVP, clearly heading into this year, his price for MVP, like I find laughable. I don't think there's really any realistic chance that this guy wins enough games to get
and you made a good point
that
with
ticket home. But I
Russ
want to put
comparison.
that on Cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't get to Russ, you're not going to get to MVP because Russ has never even got an MVP vote. Fuckers, just still wild. Because he had that thing won. I think maybe he got one last year. We might have to revise that. That was the funny stat, but
I don't believe he did.
We'll wait and get to that. But I think that's a good transition to talk Cliff, because it is very, very, they're tied together. They came in together. They wanted to run this fun college offense. Shit, they were from the same league or the same conference, I suppose. And if you want to talk Cliff hot seat again, if they make the playoffs, this is not a conversation we're having. It's such a silly thing that one game makes all the difference, because they likely lose in a playoff game. Just draft a couple spots higher. Nothing really changed. You played one more game on the road against a team that beats you. But boy, what a difference that makes in the perception to the fans, to the organization, and everything. And yeah, now he probably does have to take a decent step forward and get this team into the playoffs. Positive, the NFC is a little weaker as a conference. Negative, and we'll get to this, the schedule ain't great. And another negative is, if it was less of an injury for Kyler and more of teams, there are some people that are just saying like, hey, guess what? We figured you out. We're using, a lot of people point to that Patriots game. Patriots were extremely light in the box, extremely light as far as using people up front, going in dime constantly, and just going to this zone that was all over the place. And they were easily filling up gaps. Or like if Kyler took off, there was always someone there. They were covering everybody in this nasty zone. And a lot of people say, well, other people just found that. It's the classic cliche we use this constantly, like, oh, this team found the blueprint and everybody copied it, which there is something to that. So I mean, I'm a little column A, a little column B, but if it's more of that column B, then this is maybe more on Cliff than the injury I keep bringing up. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I hate Cliff's scheme. I hate it. It drives me insane. It drives me insane. I can't watch these games. It drives me out of my mind, trying to understand what the plan was, how they came up with it. And it feels like they're making shit up as they go a lot. Like, is that a fair way to put it? Like, it just doesn't feel well thought out. And I know that it's pretty easy to point to, well, the guy never really succeeded even at the Big 12 level in college, so why in the world was he gonna all of a sudden do that do the job well here in the NFL level? And that's a fair criticism, but realistically, it's not what it's cracked up to be in terms of this innovative shake up the norms type of approach. And I don't think they have been lacking in terms of personnel to execute it, and that's the reason why at all. And even when it is going well, he does really stupid stuff in the red zone and makes terrible decisions about when to go for it and when to kick field goals, when to punt. And I think at my core, if a guy is like out here touting himself as this big innovator and then
this disruptor,
great way to put it. He's touting himself as this disruptor, but then won't even go for it on fourth down. Like, get out of here. like you're not pushing the envelope at all. Like, stop.
It's like the people that were all excited about Bernie Sanders, and then other people in there. And again, I don't even follow politics that much, but like you'd see all these people getting excited for Bernie, and then everybody in their replies would be like, he owns like 4 houses, right? Like that's
what
like the political
fraud.
replies. Oh my God, I'm so
no.
happy we're
No,
not in an
no,
election year.
Yes, absolutely. But it's ultimately it is not something I've seen enough, really, I think is what it boils down to.
Yeah, we're
And
there.
he'll have some game plans because again, he's making shit up as he goes, as far as I can tell you. He'll have some game plans that he hits correctly, like the Niners game last year where they win in the opener. And he'll have some games where the approach is completely ass backwards, like the Patriots game, where the offense never really had a chance. And you're just going to have to live with that. And you're just going to have to understand that that's probably one of the bigger variance issues around this Arizona Cardinals team when you're considering betting on them either on the spread or with respect to the total, as we learned the hard way because of how many times they were kicking field goals. Even that Buffalo Bills game, man, that ended 30-32. I had the over in that one, and that was a sweat. There were so many field goals in that first quarter, in that first half.
I think it was on that. Yeah, I remember that. It was like,
God.
this
Oh
isn't
my
going to
God.
happen.
It was just
They're
torture.
moving.
It was just torture. And
Any field goal that
that's
starts with the number 2 in the yardage just hurts my heart.
Yeah, right.
26 yard goal, is that what we're doing?
Murray's play is instinctual play, running the football, especially finally having a nose for the end zone. 11 rushing touchdowns last year, by the way. That it is enough to elevate you in certain games and overcome some of the limitations. But I don't look at this team with high expectations at all for their offense. In fact, go ahead.
Yeah. But and kind of putting a bow on the Kimes Cliff thing, how do you view that dynamic again with the Bidwell family and management and everybody who makes decisions? Cliff is third favorite. Patrick brought up first coach fired. He's third favorite. He's going to be one of the favorites. He should be. But do you feel like it's kind of organization that would make a mid-season change? What's the benefits? Like weighing that compared to waiting for the off season, and maybe I guess it really doesn't matter anymore. Like it depends how bad you want the guy out of there. Like I don't even know who their offensive coordinator is because Kingsbury calls the plays. Like I would probably have to go check who like their offensive guy is. If they probably have like a coordinator, like some offensive assistant. It looks like it is Jeff Rodgers. So you're having Jeff Rodgers. You're probably having Vance Joseph coach at that point. Is that what you want?
Yikes.
Is that what you want?
Yikes.
But
no, see, here's the thing. Like, boy, man. Like the fact that Vance Joseph is still employed is a problem with the top-down decision making, right? Like they're bringing Vance Joseph back for year 3, right? This is his 3rd year.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, he's a guy that couldn't figure out how to use one of the more dynamic players to come through the draft process and in the last forever years. They're just an average defense.
I just think of that announcer he's having the time of his life. I can't hear his name and not think of that. What a great moment.
The time of his life. Anyway, the general, my feel is that that Keim and company are extremely on the hot seat. And if you're the Bidwells, you clean house if it's going really poorly to keep the fans from absolutely losing their shit on you. And
I think you want a
little bit of you want a little bit of a head start on your coaching search for 2021. You're not trying to 2022. You're not trying to evaluate any of the people on your that are currently in your staff, as far as
we don't make a ton of predictions on here, but we should predict who I think I could see like a Cliff and Vance are gone, and then interim, I'm going to predict interim head coach Cameron Turner, quarterbacks coach. Because you know why? I'm pretty sure he's one of Norv Turner's kids.
You think? I don't know the answer to that one.
It almost has to be. He was born in Champaign. He's coached for the Vikings. Maybe. I'm gonna have to double check that. Cameron Turner, quarterbacks coach. See if he's related to Norv.
Okay. All right, that's
Larry
not crazy.
Fitz in
I
him.
will pick. Oh, Larry Fitz in. Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
Spencer Whipple.
I think realistically, what do you think about this as far as a landing spot for Eric Bieniemy?
No,
or
that's
Brian
what I
Dable?
was saying. Like,
Brian
this is
Dable, are you going after Brian Dable is going to be the hottest coaching prospect this season. It's not going to be close. Do you move on here so that you can get a head start and get Brian Dable in here as your next head coach?
Yeah, Dable or Bieniemy, and somebody, other Patrick. We have two Patricks who are pretty active. It said, would they try to throw a bag at Riley after this year? I feel like they'd probably avoid going the college route a second time just because they were burnt. They probably would go with someone established in the NFL, Dable, Bieniemy, anybody else, who could be moved at this point. And Giorgio says he's the nephew of Norv. Boy, that speaks head coach. That speaks interim to me. Cameron Turner, interim head coach. But I agree with you. I'd like to go after Dable. I'd like to go after
He is the son of the
Bieniemy.
former FIU head coach Ron Turner and the cousin of Scott Turner, the current offensive coordinator for the Washington football team. How about that? He was a quarterback at Citadel back in the day.
Well, let's look at this schedule that's going to get him fired.
Okay.
Again, a lot of clocks. A lot of clocks.
Yeah. A lot of early games.
And I had an early thought on this schedule, Drew.
Yeah, good.
And it was wrong. It was dead wrong. It was Andy being an idiot, just looking at it, the tree for the forest, or however you say that. Sure. I looked and I'm like, man, the NFC. They face the AFC South and the NFC North.
Yes.
Which again, the AFC South, the Texans are a mess. The Jaguars are probably a mess. The Titans, decent. The Colts, tons of COVID. So things are getting easier there. The Bears' offensive line stinks, among other issues with coaching. The Lions have no receivers anymore and probably a bad quarterback. The Vikings are probably going to forfeit their game anyway due to COVID, and that team is snake bitten as well. And I'm like, man, they play two easy divisions, but then I'm just looking at it as like, here's a list of all the teams they play, but they don't list LA, Seattle, and San Fran twice. They just list them once. Yeah. I'm like,
right.
It's like, God, I named like 6 teams that are easy, but I forgot like the division is so hard. Like you're just not going to have any, it helps bring it down from being like the hardest schedule ever to like a top 10 worst. But your AFC North team you play is the Browns. You're going to play the Cowboys, which I don't care how the Cowboys work. If they're healthy-ish, at least the passing game should be working. And I just said they have no secondary. I don't know about the Panthers. Maybe that one is an easy one. But, yeah, playing in your division plus the Packers, Titans, Browns, Cowboys, and any of those teams that I said suck, surprising, it's a tough schedule. So right off the bat, it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it is tough. A lot of travel, a lot of 3 of your first 4 games on the road. That's tough when you got to do all that travel that early in the season. Yeah, you mentioned the early spots, 5 spots where you got to play at the crack of dawn your time. And then obviously that's here, that's tongue in cheek. 10 a.m. is not hard for these guys to get up for, but sometimes there's some slow starts there. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of coin flips ultimately. But I'm not backing. I'm not laying the points with these guys against some of their worst opponents. Would you?
No, and you look at if you're looking at this in the YouTube or Periscope chat, you can see the green spots, the light blue spot, and the dark blue spot are the 4 advantage spots.
Right.
San Francisco is one of them at San Francisco. So you got your extra rest off Thursday Night Football. That's a really tough game. So it helps a little. It helps a little, but that's still probably a loss. Your other 3 are versus Minnesota, Houston, and Chicago. So you're wasting, at least you make winnable games a little more winnable. That helps. But you're not getting any decent advantage spots in all the tough games, all the tough division games that we talked about. In fact, you actually have a disadvantage spot because you play the Rams after having going to the deep Southeast and playing in Duval, Jacksonville, and then coming back and having to play the Rams. Again, it's not that far to LA from Arizona/Glendale, but it's still a second straight week back-to-back after an East Coast trip. Yeah. And yeah, no advantageous spots with the other ones outside of the San Fran game, getting 2 days extra rest. So I'm not keen on this team based on the schedule and what Cliff has brought to the table thus far.
Yeah, and I think the fact that there are so many games on here that are coin flips where you are a small favorite has the potential to make this situation worse, right? If you're expected to win a handful of these games and you lose them, then
Yeah, the Chicago game, like
yeah, right. Chicago game is a great example. The Colts game, week 16, where you're 1 point favorites when hosting the Colts. Yeah, your Jags game right off the bat, week 2 and week 3 are troublesome. You know, you're hosting the Vikings is 3.5 point chalk there. If you don't win that game, there's going to be some scrutiny. You go at Jacks the next week. If you don't win that game as 2.5 point favorites, there's going to be some scrutiny. And I guess as I kind of synthesize, what do these numbers tell us? Do you want to guess what the market has the Arizona Cardinals power ranked as? Rank
like a +2,
a +1, 11th, currently the 11th team in the NFL from a power rating.
I just went high because when you make me guess, it's usually
this is the real head scratcher. You want to guess what their offense is power ranked ranking wise
in the league, like 9th,
8th. Yeah.
Oh wow! Again, I went high just on purpose.
This is expected to be a top 10 offense. The defense right now, power ranked 20th. That feels very correct to me. I would not make any adjustments on that from a defensive standpoint. But this offense was 14th last year. I don't know how they're making the leap to 8th. Not with the
AJ Green
the changes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sure. Yeah. This is going to be a tough season. This is going to be a tough season for the Cardinals, and they, maybe they're a 500 team again, maybe. But even at I guess if they are 9-8, but miss out on the playoffs, and let's say they're 3rd or 4th in the NFC West.
You fucked up my question.
Is it a clean house?
I was going to ask that. What are the odds, and has it ever happened before, that a team had a winning record and finished 4th in their division?
It's probably rare.
I don't think it's ever happened before, because there's probably been a bunch of, if it was like a stacked division, you might have had a 7-9 or 8-8 final, but like 9-8 is like, above 500. But what if you're 9-8 and finish last in the division? Like, you can kind of chalk it up to, I mean, Cliff could sell that, couldn't he? Be like, look at this division, guys. Come on.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, I think everybody's itching to move on here if they underwhelm.
Agreed.
We almost had it. We almost had it in 2008 AFC East. You had the 11-5 Dolphins, 11-5 Patriots, 9-7 Jets, and the Bills were 7-9.
Even an 8-8 team finishing dead last is
also that year in the NFC East, the Redskins were 4th at 8-8. The Saints were 4th at 8-8 as well. So apparently it does happen quite a lot. If I'm just picked a random year and there's like
getting a winning record though.
There's
a winning record
examples.
Getting your eclipsing your win total and still finishing dead last and having a winning record. The trifecta of weirdness. So should we take a look at the odds that we're not going to bet?
Yes. Super Bowl 40-1 NFC plus 1750 to win the NFC West is 5-1. What number would you need to bet to win the NFC West for these guys?
12.
Yeah, that's about right for me too. Make the playoffs, yes is plus 160, no is minus 220. Now, I don't know that I have enough confidence to tell you that no is fair at minus 220. That seems aggressive.
No, that is. There might even be, if you're positive about this team, if you have positive thoughts, that might be the take. Although I don't think an 8-9 team gets in, so you could probably, I mean, I guess
9-8 might make it. You might be the 7th seed at 9-8 in the NFC. I would not be surprised.
If I was feeling positive on this team, and there are some, again, like the wide receivers work out, you have a really good offensive line, dynamic quarterback, maybe Cliff did some soul searching, I'd go half on the over 8.5, half on the to make playoffs at a plus number, and 10 wins gets you both almost every time.
Yeah.
And 9 wins gets you both half the time, and it's a break even. And if you have 8 wins, I guess, sorry, you back the Cardinals.
Let's see here. So what has to go right to you for you to make the playoffs? Yes, well, 160. I'm surprised that's that low. You have to have the NFC East to stink as we expect. Only one team gets in. You have to have the NFC North to stink as we expect. Only one team gets in.
Stinky.
And then you can finish third. You have to beat out the Rams or the Seahawks or the Niners. And I think you could finish third and be the 7th seed. One team from that NFC South mix will surprise. We don't know who. And then 2 teams can make it from the NFC West. I would believe it. I would buy it.
Oh, and it could, if the other 3 divisions don't have any surprises, you could have 3 out of this division.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Basically, I don't think you're getting 4 out of this division, probably, but
You could.
You could. It wouldn't be.
That'd be weird. That'd be
weird.
I don't know if the math even works. All the teams would have to lose and like only win their AFC games. It'd be really weird. But 3 out of this division does seem likely. 4 is up. Andy just talking crazy talk. So yeah, I think the yes plus 160 is kind of intriguing, even though I did play under 8.5 on this team earlier in the season.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Did you get a good price at least? Better than minus 112?
I'll have to go check. I think it looks like it was way back. We were talking about the WNBA All-Star game the next day, so this is a few weeks ago.
I had
to go back and look through.
Guys.
No, just under 8.5 for me. I played that earlier. I felt pretty strongly about the AJ Green not moving the needle, plus the tough schedule. And honestly, at that point, I wasn't so crazily down on the Colts and Vikings yet. So maybe that helps me lose this one a little.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how many games I'm going to bet on the Cardinals this year. This is going to be one of those teams that I'm just like, even their week 1 game against the Titans, does that have any interest for you at all?
Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 teams that were, there's a lot of names that are playing in that game that you should care about. But I really am like,
I'm very tuned out on probably, unless I see something and I'm like, all right, I have a beat on this team. I'm going to be way, way off this. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to our promo.
Yes. Why don't you put this up on the screen? Producer Dan, who also, if you ever wanted to meet Producer Dan, he'll be there. We'll be at Blondie's. This is for anybody who's coming from out of state for the first weekend of the NFL. I'm just going to put this up. A bunch of the 4for4 guys.
Oh,
nice. John Daigle over from NBC.
Yeah.
Me and
great
Drew,
guy to have beers with, by the way.
There'll be some other people that aren't even on this list. We've invited a bunch of bookmakers, lines makers, odds makers, people from the industry that are out in Vegas that are going to show up, some friends out there as well. Basically, all you have to do is sign up and fund an account with PrizePicks. That's your entry. And not only does that get you in, it gets you free drinks for 3 hours. I'll fill you up on Reed Rooney's credit card.
Is there anything that's off limits? Like, can I just get like just Red Bull and vodka after Red Bull and vodka, or like
honestly,
anything goes?
I don't know. I think I'll probably keep you to Wells and Taps. I'm not gonna. You can't just order. Yeah, I'm not gonna let you just. It's like wedding rules. You can't walk up and just say, "I need 75 shots." Like, don't.
I'll take 6 Schlitzes.
6 Schlitzes. Don't.
Whatever's free.
Yeah. Signing up with the promo code BETSPERTS on getting a PrizePicks app. It is a daily fantasy. It is our official daily fantasy sponsor of the podcast. So sign up, fund an account.
That PrizePicks app is
bonus.
That PrizePick app is slick, man. It is nice. We got to twist Reed's arm. If we're in the acquiring companies mode right now at BetSperts, we should look into what they want, because they basically backdoored legal gaming everywhere, which is pretty freaking
fun.
smart.
I anybody who watches Brown Bag Bets, I took a couple of Noops' totals and I put it into a PrizePicks entry and I won a bunch of money on that. So I'm not only crushing tennis PrizePicks, but my preseason PrizePicks was fun. My Friday entry won as well. So download the PrizePicks app. It's on Apple and Android. All you have to do is use our promo code BETSPERTS. You get $100, up to $100 deposit match, which is a 100% deposit match. I'm so bad at saying that for some reason. I got to practice that in the mirror tonight. And yeah, join us in the back room at Blondie's right there at Planet Hollywood. And with that, let's move on to Seattle.
Awesome. Why is the market sleeping on these guys? What's your general, before we even get into this, what's the deal?
I'm hot on Seattle, baby.
Okay, you're hot on Seattle. Okay.
You know,
cool.
and it all comes down to one man. And granted, it
comes down to two men.
It comes down to two men, you're right. But I got teased. I got teased by this stupid team. This is the girl who invites you to her room to look at a scrapbook. Like, you at least were getting over the sweater. And we're looking at pictures. And I don't know, maybe that doesn't resonate with the younger crowd. When I was younger, that's what you didn't have digital cameras yet. So either way, absolute tease. Like we mentioned numerous times, Russ Wilson was the MVP. He handed him the award after a few weeks. This offense was fun. The let Russ cook was beat into the ground so much that I didn't want to hear it ever again, but it still rung true. When they let Russ do his cooking, it was a fun offense. DK Metcalf is a disgusting mutant who cannot be stopped. He is an absolutely massive human being who does his job so well. And like, they have weapons. And then for some reason, it's similar to, it was similar to like the Kellen Moore experience when we saw that, like, hey, this is working down in Dallas. And then JG stuck his stupid fingers in the pie and it all turned around. All of a sudden we're throwing 3-yard outs to Jason Witten again. I don't know if who was or who did it, if it was, who decided to let Russ cook and then who decided to turn the burner straight off. But they really did change how they played, and it stunk and it wasn't fun. And the real crux of the thing was, I was pissed. I hated how the team looked in the second half of the season, and they won 12 games.
Yeah.
Like,
12-4. Yes.
This is a team that should have been competing for a Super Bowl, and I just didn't feel it when they got to the playoffs. I'm like, I'm not feeling this. I'm not feeling this team. And again, like,
no, you bet against them with the Rams, right? I remember that.
Yep, absolutely we did, and it sucked. So I hopefully, and really offensive changes is going to be pretty quick. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but why don't you, if you want to run through 2020 quick, and I'll chime in where needed.
All right. No, I thought you described that well. It was a tale of two seasons, really. The first half and the second half. The first half was all offense and doing things that you were so excited to finally see done on the football field involving Russell Wilson. 5-0 into their bye week. Coming out of the bye week, a very, very hard fought loss against the Arizona Cardinals. Was that the game that DK Metcalf ran down Budda Baker off after the pick?
Yeah.
Was this also the game where the end of the game was just absolutely insane? One of these games, the end game scenario was absolutely insane. Like, it took like a couple of crazy penalties to get the game tying field goal in regulation. Do you remember what I'm describing?
Which Arizona game was that though? Like, I
This
can't
was the
remember
first
which
one. The Cardinals.
They were unbeaten going into the Cardinals game. And Russ
they were up 34-24. They were up 10 points.
Bunch of picks. So he threw a bunch of picks, and I think the last one set up the field goal. And
don't you remember though that there was like a crazy a leverage penalty on Bobby Wagner or something on like the field goal block, and they moved it in. He got another one. Yeah, there was. All right. Well, I'm not.
But yeah, it was the overtime game, and they were again with overtime. They were outscored 20-7 in the second half in overtime. So that's how you lose your undefeated season in it. And they'd scored 27 points in the first half, and then maybe that's where it turned. They just stopped being good at halftime there. Although they did look really good the next week against the Niners, and yes, the Niners were beat up by that time, but they returned home and dropped 37 on them.
That was
and then
cool
Femi should have a say in this, because I think he is from up there in the Pacific Northwest and follows the Seahawks and the NFC West a little closer. He mentioned the Bills game as the turning point, And I have a hard time disagreeing there because the offense, if you look at that one just from a standpoint of, let's take a look at this final score. It's like, they put up a decent showing there, but I really it didn't feel like a good showing, I guess. It was 24 second half points. Like that was 24-10 at half. And the Bills really didn't do much in the third quarter. And, the Seahawks comeback was just never quite there. Like they scored a bunch in the second half and it really wasn't much. But yeah, that was maybe that was kind of a turning point for Buffalo too. Where it's like, oh man, Buffalo could just put up 44 here. What are we doing?
Well,
and yeah, Josh Allen dropped 415 on him that day.
Yeah, that was the last game of the season that the Seattle Seahawks had 300 yards passing. How insane is that? That's wild. They did not even actually even get close again to 300. Their top passing production after that was 236 against the Jets. And they had some real bad ones in that mix too. Like their game against the Giants was just absolute garbage. They did not get 300 yards passing. They only had 142 yards passing in the playoff loss to the Rams. So, when your strength is and this is, dude, they had some unbelievable output in the first half of the season through the air. I don't understand why they went away from it, but we'll never understand.
Just go through their wins.
Second half of the season. Okay. There are so many complicating factors here too.
Yes.
Because in the first half of the season, they were playing a lot of really good offenses. They played the Falcons and the Cowboys, obviously. The Vikings had a decent offense at the time. The Patriots had a healthy, fresh arm Cam Newton in that game week 2. Cardinals, we talked about. The Niners, the Bills, we know. And so it was they kind of had to play score for score football with a lot of those teams. And then over the second half of the season, they played just absolute dog shit quarterbacks, just terrible quarterbacks. They had Goff twice. They had Wentz. They had Daniel Jones. They had Darnold and the Jets. They had I can't remember who the Washington football team QB was week 15. Probably Alex Smith.
Might have been Alex Smith.
Yeah. And they got who they have week 17, CJ Beathard. So, you really only had one game against any quarterback that finished in near the top half of the league. And that was your rematch against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals week 11. And so on paper, their defense looked really good because they were going up against really poor quarterback play. And so I think they basically just outsmarted themselves, which, spoiler alert, Pete Carroll is wont to do. Outsmarting himself. And they changed their identity and were like, well, hey, look, man, our defense is playing great. We're going to win on the back of solid defensive, gamesmanship here. And it was not the correct decision at all, in my opinion. And it really is why I think it's easy to look past these guys a little bit this year, because that anytime Pete Carroll gets his fingers involved in the offense, then things could go sideways, and it could happen in the middle of the season, and it could happen for the whole second half of the season at times, as we now know. So that is very much in the back of my head, and I acknowledge that is probably the biggest the thing that's a little spooky about this team is that Pete Carroll is still very actively involved, and he does not have he refuses to learn the lessons of analytics Twitter, which is especially insane because there are so many analytics Twitter people that are Seattle Seahawks diehards. So this is like a personal hell for a lot of these people, which I find just absolutely amazing.
And did they beat Daniel Jones?
They lost outright.
And you know what? They did not lose to him either. That was the Colt McCoy game, which makes it
it was Colt McCoy.
Even more damning.
Oh my god!
I had to go check that. I was almost sure of it. The Colt McCoy game, which I mean, they beat the ever living tar out of the Jets, and that felt good. But the Eagles at that point in the season, some of those games, it's like a lot of these shouldn't have been in doubt. And yeah, that was shocking. I guess that was kind of a shocking loss. I guess I would say that's a weird one. We went through a few of these with this division already, and the Jets game, they beat the tar out of Washington. They won. That's a tough place to play, especially Washington was kind of good. That was a good defense. The Rams and Niners late, both those games probably closer than they should have been. I think the Rams Seahawks, a 20-9 game, I felt like I bet that, and they did clinch the title there. So I'm not sure if game 17 meant anything. I think if they win, they had a chance at the bye, but
That's
they
true.
needed the
They did.
Packers to lose.
You needed the
They had the
Saints.
Packers to
the
lose
Packers
to the
and the Saints
Bears.
to lose or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of a weird game, but yeah. And then just like I said, they this is a fun fact too. Highest scoring offense in Seattle Seahawks franchise history, which is how you get your offensive coordinator fired. And I did, and it's a funny, like, oh, that's a funny dichotomy there, but no,
That's
like,
insane.
that's how damning his, like, oh, this guy doesn't need to be here anymore. You scored the most points ever in franchise history, and you still were let go in January.
That's
how bad they wanted to move on.
All right. Well, we gotta come back to that. So put a pin in it. But let's talk about Wild Card Saturday, January 9th, where everything went sideways for these guys. 12-14 on the back of a relatively easy schedule, as we mentioned. A total that got absolutely blasted down. So many people on the under there, and it never really had a chance. 50 points were scored. The Rams and John Wolford, I think, or was it ended up being Goff in that game? I can't even remember. The Rams ended up scoring 30 points. Yeah, there was some rumbling going into that game. Coming out of that game, it got louder that there was sort of a book on Wilson. Do you recall this?
Yeah, I think Goff and Wolford played. Now that I'm looking at it, I really
Wolford started and he went out with an injury, and then Goff.
I think remember Goff was like he dressed, but
Wolford got hit in the head, right? He got popped.
Yeah. Remember his head snapped so hard, and it was like Goff could play, but we don't want him to play. And then Wolford got hurt after like a quarter, and they're like, oh, now Goff is in, and he still lost to that team.
Yeah, but it felt like after that game, a lot of people were like, oh, Brandon Staley knows exactly what to do to defend Seattle. Like, he's got the book on him, right? He's got the book on Wilson. You play you play your safeties high, and you take away the deep ball, and he's not going to pick you apart with the short intermediate stuff. He's just not. That's not the type of quarterback he is. And a lot of people were using that over the second half of the season. So, it was sort of a perfect storm of, you were shooting yourself in the foot in terms of changing your scheme, but also teams did have a little bit of a read on how to properly defend you. DK Metcalf is a straight line guy, or at least he was. Maybe he'll be a little bit more dynamic this year. Tyler Lockett was hurt. That mattered a lot. I thought Lockett always unlocked the best of Russell Wilson throughout his career to this point. So that was a huge small thing that went unnoticed. And then, we get to the offseason, and Schottenheimer gets fired. And this is something that people were clamoring for a long time before last year, where he did sort of the pieces all fell into place. But then he regressed so aggressively over the second half of the season. And in the moment that Schottenheimer got fired, and what you heard kind of swirling, quotes from Pete, quotes from Russ, lots of, he got fired because his vision for how he wanted to run the offense, which was the correct vision, was not what Pete Carroll wanted to do. And in that moment, I'm sitting there reading this stuff, and I'm just like, well, I can't get involved with this team. Like, that they're actively moving the wrong direction. Like, they're literally moving on from, like you said, they moved on from the guy that had them score the most points in franchise history. They are moving on from the guy that literally unlocked what you wanted to see from Russell Wilson over the first 8 games of the season. And my thought was, hey, they're going to hire a guy who sucks and who is going to do what a Pete Carroll yes man, who is going to establish the run at all costs, and he was going to drive this offense over a cliff. That was like my gut at the time. Did you have the same reaction?
I actually kind of went a different way with it. I get what you're saying, but I also went and said maybe they should get rid of this guy because he didn't have the balls to stand up to Pete Carroll and say, look what we did over the first 5 weeks. Why would we regress from that? Like, and again, if they went and hired a yes man, we're fucked. We're gonna find out pretty quick on that. But I like some of the stuff we saw in the preseason, and you don't traditionally see the whole kit and caboodle in the preseason. So if it turns out to be a dynamic offense like we saw in the first part of last season, and this guy actually has the cojones to tell Pete Carroll, a coach of over a decade, that this is either we're running the offense this way, or maybe I just hit the road and figure something else out, because why would we stop doing this? We're going to score 550 points this year. Like it's silly. And again, this is the only offensive change that really mattered to me this offseason. There was a little bit, a little bit of here and there with player personnel, but really they only made 3 picks in the entire draft. And we could do the changes for like in 13 seconds. In fact, I'm going to do it. They added a backup tight end. They added a backup DL. They got Gabe Jackson, fired Schottenheimer, brought in Waldron. That's it. They made three picks in the draft further down. They lost some higher picks with some, again, decent trades with the Jets and some other players or other teams, but that's kind of all they did. And the only thing that really matters is if Waldron works and is able to assert himself and let this offense breathe like it did early, or if he's just shoddy too. And then, so I don't know. What do you think happens? Like, because I'm leaning towards your way that why would they hire someone who would do the exact same Schottenheimer was doing, just more effectively? Like, you know what, I'm going to go hire somebody who has more of a backbone and really wants to disagree with me after we fired the last guy for philosophical differences. I get it, but maybe the guy just interviewed well and he's going to come in and maybe it's a honey and vinegar thing where there's a way to approach Bill Parcells, Jesus, Pete Carroll. Wow, are they in the same tree? Why did I go there? But if there's a way to approach Bill
Patriots
Carroll,
coaches before Bill
yeah,
Belichick.
there you go. If there's a way to approach this with Parcells, my God, Pete Carroll, and convince him, and maybe just Schottenheimer didn't have that sort of people skills to make it or convince him or show him the numbers or something. That's how this offense succeeds, because they have so much talent. But it's just, yeah, if they do this again and we just revert back to establishing the run with all the running backs they always accumulate, things are going to go bad.
Yeah. Okay. I completely agree with you. My general read on the Shane Waldron hiring is it's interesting that you picked somebody who was in division. Maybe, guy who's privy to some of the Rams prep when they put together the game plan that thoroughly stumped you in the playoffs. That would be interesting to know. It's crazy that we're sitting here. Pete Carroll has been a head coach in the NFL for 11 years. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1. He's an accomplished coach at the collegiate level, on top of being, having a successful tenure here at Seattle. All he does is win double-digit games every year. Like, all that is fine and true and fair. And he has his strengths. He absolutely can coach up defensive players, particularly in the secondary. He gets better than replacement level play out of guys at that position generally. But it is insane to me that you go hire an offensive coordinator like Shane Waldron, and he has 2 jobs. One is actually running a plus EV offense, and the other is keeping Pete Carroll happy and off of his back from the way he's doing that. And that's insane to me, that this is the world you live in, where you have to basically placate your boss by giving him, a little bit of minus EV stuff. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah,
but
let's feed him a little here. Oh man, I need to give him some. It reminds me. My head
There's
went
a couple
to like
run
a
pass
pitcher.
for you.
Yeah, you get an 0-2 count, you got to waste one. Like, I'm going to waste one, see if he'll chase. It's the same thing. Like, all right, we've had a couple really efficient pass plays with some motion and some misdirection. I should run right up the gut, off guard, into a stacked box to appease my coach now.
It's crazy. It's crazy that that's where we're at, but that is where we're at. And I mean, everything I've heard from Waldron to this point in the preseason, in terms of the quotes we're getting out of it, hearing from Seattle beat reporters, suggests that he is incorporating wrinkles that Schottenheimer did not, that are going to be absolutely huge for this offense. Notably, pre-snap motion. Notably, more. We need as much Russ on play action as humanly fucking possible, and we don't have to establish the run to do it. Like, if we see that type of stuff early and often for the Seahawks team, I am going to be ecstatic. And I think they are going to be an extremely, extremely tough team to look past in the NFC if we're getting that. If
I am
we're
too,
not,
but I'm gonna have
yes,
last year stuck in my head. Yeah, I'm gonna
in the
be
back of your
so
head the whole time.
ecstatic.
Yeah, of course.
In the back of my head, I'm gonna be thinking about last year where it's like, oh my god, this team is never like in my mind, I'm like, this offense legitimately could go undefeated. Like this offense is just so dynamic at times. Like they could beat everybody. This is such a fun team. And then yeah, I'm gonna have that in the back of my head, like, man, fool me once. Like, oh man, she's changed. I'm taking her back. And then you forget about the last time. So yeah,
Unreal, man.
the new offense really is the old offense. Just hopefully it's the old offense of weeks 1 through 5. And yeah, outside of that, I mean, just looking at depth charts and stuff, not anything that really changed of real consequence
I like their
besides
offensive line
addition
addition.
of a guard.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Gabe
I like
Jackson thing.
Gabe.
That's a nice move to shore up probably an already decent offensive line. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and the running back stuff doesn't matter. They've proven that they can pretty much plug in everyone back there and get mediocre results. But yeah, Lockett, Metcalf, and this rookie, he's kind of flat. I made fun of him not picking much, but they did
Sure.
have a second round pick. They got a kid from the MAC, Dwayne Eskridge. He flashed a couple times in preseason.
He did.
If that works out, and some of the because you don't have a ton of depth, you have some tight end depth now with a couple guys. But yeah, if your wide receiver depth is where it is, you need the strengths of it to work out. But yeah, they I think they went and got. I might even be looking at. Oh yeah, I'm looking at 2020. I was looking back at last year's roster because I seen their lead tight end was Greg Olsen there. Like, well, that's not
He's
right.
gone.
No,
Yeah.
it's Will Dissly, and then they
Dissly now,
did
yeah.
bring in someone else too. Gerald Everett, I think Gerald Everett, and they have another one too, and Colby Parkinson. So a bunch of tight ends, but yeah, wide receiver depth is kind of stuck with Will Dissly. Is he still?
Yeah,
Oh, he's
Will
the tight end.
Dissly's
Never mind.
TE1. Yeah. What were you going?
Freddie
The wide receiver
Swain.
depth?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Kinsey?
no. The wide receiver depth is a huge problem.
Stinks.
Huge problem.
Penny
Freddie
Hart.
Swain, Cody Thompson, Penny Hart. No. I don't know if these other guys are even those. I don't know if those other guys are even going to make the team. Yeah, if something happens to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you are in deep trouble because those guys are the gap between those guys and their replacements is absolutely monumental.
Yeah.
And similarly, they have some issues on the defense. There are definitely weaknesses. There are definitely holes here. Obviously, you still have Bobby Wagner, who is all universe, kind of captaining this unit. So in general, they should be good. Carlos Dunlap still expected to make an impact, probably. From a pass rush standpoint, that was a decent trade you made last season. Obviously, you trade your future capital for Jamal Adams, and then you give Jamal Adams a massive contract. You had to after you made the trade, but you gave up way too much to get him in the first place, in my opinion. And he's a dynamic. He can create pressure. He's a pressure creator, no question about that. You'll get some nice moments, some nice highlights out of him from a pressure standpoint, but his coverage skills are somewhat lacking, which means you're going to need Trey Flowers and Akila Witherspoon to really kick ass in the coverage department this year. And again, not a lot of depth there. If you're seeing lots of snaps of Trey Brown and John Reed and DJ Reed and Will Sutherland, we got a problem. So your wide receiver 1 and 2, your cornerback 1 and 2 must stay healthy, or else this is a huge downgrade in those units specifically. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that.
I talked about the a lot of things that disappointed me off the bat, and then said they still won 12 games. They still had a great year. They still went to the playoffs. They didn't go very far, but they did this without their 12th man. Like,
that's
the fact
true.
That you have not only the advantage of how loud that stadium gets, but it is a outside of the division for a lot of anybody who's not in the division or like the Chargers. This is a long travel spot for a lot of people. So nasty travel spot plus nasty fans. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk on home field advantage just a little bit. that should return, especially for some of these dome teams. We're expected to see, Minnesota, Seattle, New Orleans, who might not play all their games in the dome now that we're looking at the weather. And how much are you? Is it big enough to actually make an impact on your power ratings into this season?
It is.
I think it's
they're at the top
a half
for me.
point.
I mean, they're at the top, and they always will be. They get, especially in a primetime game, they get a hell of a lot out of that crowd. And
they put the flag up.
They put they have the big
12.
Yeah, the Big 12, the thing at the beginning of the game gets everybody fired up. That's big. I'm at 2.5 points for them for home field advantage on average over the course of the season, and that's about the top. That's about as much as I can concede without more evidence of what HFA may be like until we get into some actual results. So I think it's going to be big, and actually we should pivot right to schedule because I think it's going to matter in the divisional race. Would it surprise you to see that the main two expected challengers for defending their NFC West title are the Rams and the Niners? You agree? That's what the market thinks, at least.
I mean, if I had to rank the three teams that could do it, I would rank those two ahead of Arizona. But
let's say if you got two games on your schedule and you wanted them to be in primetime, would you put the game you're hosting the Rams and the game you're hosting the Niners so that you get the home field advantage impact on those two games?
That would be good. Did that happen?
It did happen. It did happen.
Oh,
Week 5, Thursday night football. The
Thursday
Rams
night
come to
football.
Seattle, and then week 13, Sunday night football, the Niners come to Seattle. So you do not have to play on the road in division in primetime. Your two main opponents to win this title do. And I think that's pretty important ultimately. If those are higher likelihood to win those two games, that's massive for for you getting this division title in a very competitive NFC West. I think that might be enough to tilt the balance in your favor, to be honest with you. It's their road games in primetime. They got to go at Washington and they got to go at Pittsburgh. That's not bad. So you're basically the West Coast team on the East Coast in primetime. I always love that. I always love
time
that
to
spot.
acclimate. Yeah.
I love that. Only 2 clocks on this schedule compared to, say, the Arizona Cardinals 5. Only 2 of the games you have to go east. You're forced to play early. One of them is week 1 at Indianapolis. So you're getting one of them out of the way right off the bat. The other one is at Houston, where you're going to win by multiple touchdowns anyway. Yeah. So who the hell cares?
And do remember that we put these charts together with the original lines at the beginning of the season. So not only every time anybody plays Green Bay, we have to mention that because the Green Bay line was the halfway between Rodgers and Love, but also the Indy line. I don't think there's I don't know if there's ever been as much rec money on one team in week 1, 2 weeks before the season than has come in on Seattle. And I'm not even saying it's rec money because it's dumb money. Just as soon as the wins and
the volume,
just the volume of my Twitter feed was just a wall of people. I'm going to bet the Seahawks right now. So, I mean, that line is clearly moved. And with all the bad luck Indy has had, I don't blame them. That might be the situation is a East Coast early start for them. But, man, with the bad luck we've had in Colts land, that might not be such a tough game after all. They play 2 teams off the bye. Patrick mentioned a pretty easy landing with Chicago and Detroit at home, presumably both eliminated from the playoffs. Maybe Chicago's still in it if they're surprising. And then the Cameron Turner-led Arizona Cardinals on the road to close the season to just end out their 6-11 season there.
Interesting.
So kind of nice soft landing outside of the Rams game is so after the bye, the Green Bay game the Rams game, and San Fran at home. Those are your toughies. If you get two out of those three, do you win the division?
Ultimately, the travel that they are asked to do, which is usually among the most onerous because of where they are and geographically. This year's not bad, honestly. It really isn't.
Yeah.
They don't have long trips on week 2 of back-to-backs, really. They don't. They do have to play. Yeah, week 2 of back-to-back, you are on the road against the Rams and the Niners, which I guess obviously is not ideal. But those are at least shorter trips, which matters. The 3 out of their first 4 on the road is a little tough, but that means you just end up having a decent amount of your home games middle of the season there where, maybe you want them. So that's interesting. The back-to-back weeks where they are playing a team with extra rest off their bye is also tricky. They get a Monday Night Football home game against the Saints coming off the bye. However, it's Monday Night Football game, so you get an extra day of rest as well. That's not the worst thing. Similarly, then the next week they roll out and they're playing the Jags off their bye. I don't know if that really matters much. Again, the Jags are coming to you anyway. So not the worst spot in general. And realistically, I think this is going to be a pretty likely season where they can get into the 11 wins comfortably, and it's coin flippy. Yeah, it's coin flippy if they're 12, 13, 14, honestly, in my opinion.
Probability that week 15 at LA gets flexed.
Oh, that's actually interesting.
I know.
I'm going to say it's low. You know why?
It's low because the Rams will be good.
And Stafford will be out for the season with some weird injury. So,
yeah. No, I'm just trying to look at, like, they don't, if it's not that, they don't have like a late season flex game because the best, I don't know when flex starts, but the really only good game in the second half of their season is already in Sunday Night Football. We're not going to get, dude. I love
they
Seattle
could win their
Sunday
last
Night
5,
Footballs,
man.
Because Seattle is the stupidest team when it comes to just having weird ass games. Like, who is it? I think it's somebody over at the Ringer says, like, that tweet, like, Seattle has never played a normal game. I wish the San Fran game was week 18 because I think that'll be for the division. If it were
the week 13 game.
This is for our 14th win.
God damn, dude. Their last 5 are all so winnable. Was it Femi who brought up the soft landing? The last 5 games.
Patrick, well, even just the last 3.
Man,
like,
man.
You can lose that Rams game and still probably win the division, depending on
just having Houston, Chicago, and Detroit. Having Houston, Chicago, and Detroit at the end of your schedule, you gotta love that. You love that. Love to see
Good
that.
question. Good question. I hate to call him other Patrick, but I'm going to because I just did. But good question. Any chance they're overrated week 8 after 3 straight weeks of primetime? I think it could go either way. Like if they underperform on those primetime games, you can be underrated. But I mean, he does bring up a good point as far as, like, when a team is on national television that much, how they do is amplified extra in the market. So maybe a good place to attack them if you feel like they're being underrated or overrated based off those results.
That is a great point. That is a very good point. Especially if the Jags don't look great heading into their bye and they come out and you're getting just a gob of points there week 8. That might be a good time to try to sell high on some Seahawks. This is my general feeling for this team. And we can look at the odds and see if we can figure out the right way to marry these two thoughts. Super Bowl 25-1 is disrespectful. That's insane. Russell Wilson is a top 5 QB in this league, and it's unarguable fact. 25-1 for a top 5 QB is banana land. 10-1 to win the NFC is banana land. This team is absolutely in the tier of likely contenders. And it's going to take major injuries to their skill position players, quarterback or cornerbacks, to change my opinion on that. To win the NFC West, plus 240, not quite as much as I would have looked. I saw some plus 275s floating around last week, and I had an itchy trigger finger for it. I didn't play it. I went instead with a alt over on their win total, and I'll make the case for that in a second. To make the playoffs, yes, minus 130, no is plus 105, and their regular season win total, it's 9.5, it's 10 at some places. Right now at WinBet, the over 9.5 is minus 150, under is plus 120. Now, I played over 11, and I got almost 2-1 on that. Do you think that was a better play than NFC West at plus 275?
I'd rather have it than NFC West because I think they can win 12 games and finish 2 games behind the Niners in some iterations.
That was exactly my thought process.
There's a lot of scenarios where they lose this division in a tiebreaker or by a game, and they have like 12 wins because there's some talent, and there are some people that there's scenarios where Stafford works out, and then you have three-way talent. But I would prefer the NFC number. I might have the NFC to win the NFC on 2 teams in this division. Spoiler alert: I mean, it's the Niners. But to make the playoffs, minus 130 feels actually light. I feel like that's probably happening closer to 65% of the time.
Yeah,
and
same.
then if you do play a win total, play at least over a flat 10. So yeah,
list for me quarterbacks in the NFC who are better than Russell Wilson.
I mean, there's one. He lives in Appleton. That's probably
Aaron
it. Rodgers. Like Rodgers played. If he plays near the level he played last year, he's better. Tom Brady, it's hard to tell just because he has
better
so
playoff
much
quarterback.
Talent. Yeah. He's so much talent around him.
He did beat Russell Wilson head to head in a Super Bowl, so I think you got to give it to him there.
Yeah, I'll give it. Brady is close, but he's older and he is just a sick fucking roster.
God. Oh yeah, everything.
And then just like maybe Lance. That's it. Close on that.
No, I think that's correct. I think Aaron Rodgers, and honestly, Aaron Rodgers for a lot of last year, I would have taken Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers. It was really only the end of the season where where Rodgers was throttling teams and Wilson was an afterthought that it was clear that Rodgers was better. But I'm giving it some serious thought between those two guys if I'm taking NFC North quarterbacks in a draft to start a franchise. So I guess one sort of last kind of weird issue. So anyway, I played over 11. I got 2-1. I think it's a good play. I think the alt-win over for Seattle is a good angle of attack. And I think this team is going to make you look good because they are going to win a lot of games down the stretch, as we talked about. And then they are going to get punked in the playoffs. Doesn't it have that whiff, man? Doesn't a playoff punking at the hands of a bad Pete Carroll decision feel like the right way the book ends for this guys this season? Isn't that the last chapter?
Sweep the Niners.
And then
lose
the Niners
the division by a game. And you sweep the division. And even if you win the division,
if you sweep the division, you're like 15-2 probably.
Yeah.
Realistically.
All right.
If you win,
split with the Niners maybe and lose. Man, they might lose one weird one to like Arizona. That just feels like it's a thing that always happens. So I don't know. Yeah, it does feel like a team that runs into Niners, Green Bay, Tampa in the playoffs and loses.
They lose. No, you know what? They lose like a game like the Monday Night Football game at Washington or something because they go in and they're like, oh my God, we're so scared of this defensive line. We're going to have to run the ball. And so they crafted just a god awful game plan and just stink against Washington. But no, I think this team, I think the second weekend of the playoffs, this team gets punked either at home or on the road because of a bad game plan.
Yeah.
Might even come at the hand of the Packers.
Could be Green
matchup.
Bay.
Yeah, could be Green Bay. Man. If you might be in a bad situation where you have to go to Green Bay week 1 of the playoffs because your division is so competitive between you and the Niners. Ultimately, this is going to be a great regular season team and a team that I really want nothing to do with when it comes to the playoffs. That's my
same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
And we zoom in on the picture, Jack Nicholson, who was at that New Year's party all those years ago at the beginning of the show.
Oh, that's a great call.
All right.
Hey, question
Only one
for you.
more of these. Shoot.
I know. I got one real serious question about the Seahawks. I got to ask you though. What if we're kind of same as it ever was with this team? How do they fix that? What do they do? Like what? Like if you're what's his name, Schneider? If you're John Schneider, the hell do you do? Your buddy, you're thick as thieves with Pete Carroll. If he's ultimately the problem, what's the solution?
No,
here?
he makes it through the year. Like they're going to be good enough. He makes it. It doesn't. You can know what this problem is and still keep it around. Somebody's making fun of my flex. It was a big yawn into like a half flex. So, and yeah, Femi. Oh man, Femi's not going to be here for the finale. We're going to have to just talk a bunch of shit about.
It's going to be a good one.
Picks, but yeah, the PS Rams missed the playoffs. He says.
Yeah,
so,
I don't.
Yeah, I don't think Pete is, and Patrick brings up Pete's damn near 70. So you just wait him out by attrition. But it's one of those things where you just waiting for him to go away.
So Russell Wilson never wins.
You can't win 14 games this year. Super Bowl. If you win 14 games and lose your first playoff game, you don't fire a guy. You just be like, oh, it's a tough Green Bay game. Oh, he lost to a Hall of Famer, and Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. You can't fire him. He lost to a Hall of Famer.
If Russell Wilson's only ever Super Bowl is his second season, is that a failure?
Yeah.
I mean, we are on the cusp actually of Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers each only winning one Super Bowl with their respective teams.
It's hard to win a Super Bowl.
That would be mind-blowing. I guess.
Yeah.
Did Peyton Manning only win one with the Colts?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, Aaron Rodgers forever tied with Brad Johnson for Super Bowl wins. Trent Dilfer. Joe Flacco.
That's right. Elite quarterbacks.
Jim McMahon.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Who was the third Redskin? I can say Redskins because it was that long ago. It was Doug Williams, Joe Theismann. I feel like it was 3 different quarterbacks.
Mark Rippon.
Mark Rippon. Thank you. Oh God, it's giving me heebie-jeebies
with the posse, man. Mark Rippon with the posse.
The Denver one again. All right, let's cut the viewers loose for the night. We'll meet back here Wednesday.
Okay, sounds good, man.